Okay, great. So we'll drag in a fifth view controller to go over the labs from yesterday. We'll do 3 of the questions from lab. So for now, we'll drag in a fifth view controller. So go to your object library and search for view controller. So start typing in view, C-O-N, view controller will come up. And you want to drag this view controller over to your canvas. Yes. Yes, you can. But I'll continue it from the Autolayout project. Cool? Good. Actually, you should do it from the Autolayout project and then redo it again.
No, we're not.
How can you get better? You got to practice Autolayout. That's the only way to practice. Okay, you heard everything you say now, right? Like later when you struggle with Autolayout, you'll be like, okay. Yes, it is right now. Okay, so we're dragging a UI view. I'm not going to exactly match the colors for now. Use whatever colors you want, right? We're not grading you on the color matching here. So grab whatever color you want. But first of all, we need a UI view. So go to the object library and search for UI view and drag a UI view in right onto our scene. Right? Let me name my view controller scene. So this one is Autolayout 5. I'll call it Autolayout. Again, before I do anything here, let's see what's happening. Let me zoom in. Interesting. This is broken.
This is going to be question 1.
This is going to be question 1, correct. So we go to our view controller scene here. We edit where it says view controller. I will call it Autolayout 5. We still have a warning, right? We still have a warning here because we have a new view controller. We need to give that new view controller a storyboard ID. Same as what we did yesterday. We have a warning. We need to give the view controller a storyboard ID. Where do we go to give the storyboard an ID? Where do we go? What's that inspector called? Identity inspector. So we'll go to the identity inspector to the left of the attributes inspector. I'll go down to where it says storyboard ID and I'll put in Autolayout 5. And I'll make sure to press enter. Now we should have no warnings. Okay. I'll go back to my scene where I have my UI view. I will give my UI view any color of my choosing here. So this particular question, if we go back to the lab, this particular question is looking for 2 views where they're both the same height and the same width, right? Equal width, equal height.
When I click on my view to change identity, all I see is restoration ID, not story.
So far we have 1 view. Go ahead, Tanya.
She has to click on the.
What's that?
She has to click on the bar that's right above it, or.
The bar. I think Genesis is working with her currently. Thank you so much for that feedback. Okay, so we have a view. We gave it a color. First thing, let's go ahead and drag the left handle, the right handle, and the top handle to the edges of the white scene. Okay, so we'll go ahead, we'll drag the right side or the trailing side of our view. We'll drag our trailing side to the trailing of the white scene. Okay, we drag the lead-in. Again, the lead-in is the left side of my view. I will drag the lead-in side over. I drag the lead-in side over to my leading white scene. Okay? I'll do the same thing for the top. I'll drag the handle on the top of my blue view here, my teal view, up to the notch area, right? So I will drag the top. I'll drag the top over to the top area here. I'll drag the bottom. For now, I'll estimate about where half the screen is, the height of the screen. Right? Now I need to go ahead and set constraints on that particular view. I need to set constraints on that particular view. I will set 3 constraints for now using a pinning action. We haven't seen pin yet. We'll see pin today. So I'll use pin via the Add New Constraints button. We all remember where the Add New Constraints button is. So let's go to the Add New Constraints button. 1 second. We'll go to the Add New Constraints button. I'll click on it. I'll make sure that my view is selected. I'll go ahead and click on it again. Give me 1 second. I reinstalled everything on my computer yesterday. Give me a second. I want to get my zoom in back. Accessibility. Zoom. Use keyboard shortcut here. Okay. So again, we're going back to the Add New Constraints button. I'm able to zoom in now. Well, still not. Did I not turn it on? I wanted to make sure I could zoom for you guys to see in the back. Give me a second, sorry. Accessibility, zoom. Use keyboard shortcut, that's on. Okay, there's a slight bug with that. Okay, so I'll just talk about what we're going to, because I can't zoom in right now. I'll fix it in the break. So press Add New Constraints. Make sure your button is selected, your view is selected, Add New Constraints. Do we see the top value? The top value for mine says -15. Do we see the very top value where my mouse is here? We have 4 values. If we see we have a top value, we have a leading edge value, we have a trailing edge value, and we have a bottom value. On the Add New Constraints dialog box, do we see that? Those values, we could edit those values. If I say that value is 0, what that means is my blue view here, my teal view, will be pinned to that particular edge. If I want my top edge to be pinned exactly at the top edge, I set that value to 0. If I want my leading edge to be pinned exactly to the leading edge of my super view, I set that value to 0. So far, so good? So let's go ahead and do that for 3 values. Top value, leading, and trailing. So make sure that they're set to 0, right? When you set it to 0 here, it goes to bright red. Do we see that? When I click 0 and I press enter, that particular strut there, the I-beam, do we see like the I-beam, the small red line, the I-beam, that goes to bright red, right? That means that particular constraint is getting added. We haven't added it explicitly yet, but now we should see add 1 constraint. Do we see that? At the bottom here, do we see add 1 constraint? Okay, let's go ahead to the lead-in. Let's also, to add the lead-in, you click on the I-beam. The red, the lightly red, the disabled I-beam, click on it, it becomes bright red. Right? So to turn it on, you click on it, it becomes bright red. To turn it off, you click on it again, it goes to disabled light the red. Yes?
Okay, so when you drop it down, it actually has the option view color
For now, exactly as we have, that's what we're looking for.
So safe area.
Not whatever the default is
No,
right
safe
now.
area, because that's what it was when I changed it.
Okay, whatever the default is right now, we want to pin it to the very top of the super view. We want to pin it to the leading of the super view. We want to pin it to the trailing of the super view. So far, we have 2 constraints. We need a third constraint. So go ahead and click on the I-beam for the trailing constraint. So click on that third I-beam here. It should become bright red. Everybody? How many constraints do we have now? It says add 3 constraints, correct? So go ahead and click on add 3 constraints. Right? At that point, we should still have an error. Anybody could tell me why we should have an error currently? Yes, sir. Right, so Christian says we do not have a height for our teal view. So we do not have a height, so we still have an error. We could see our error here. It says need constraints for height, as Christian said. We need a constraint for the height. The problem asks to constrain the height such that it's half the height of the view. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Yesterday, we were able to control drag from one view to a next view to set a constraint on that view, correct? So today, we'll do the same thing we'll use the navigation, we'll use the document outline. Let's go ahead and name our view, actually. So click on your teal view or whatever color view you have. Click on it and edit the view name. So let's give it an explicit name. I'll call mine teal view. Again, to edit it, you click on the view you want to edit, the name, and you click on it once again, and it's going to go into edit mode. Did it go into edit mode for you, Yulia? Very good. So at this point, we have a teal view. What we want to do is control from our teal view, control drag from our teal view over up to our view. So let's go ahead and control drag from our teal view up to our view. Right? And we want to select equal heights. So go ahead and select equal heights here in the dialog box. Do we all see equal heights in the dialog box? Right? Did we control drag from the teal view up to our view? What options do we see? Again, that might be 11.2. I need to confirm that's a 11.2 change. But for now, go ahead and control drag. Do you see it, Amini? Okay, that's a confirm. That's a 11.2 change. So I would suggest updating to 11.2 on the weekend. That's like a nice experience, right, for what we want to do. We want to lay out based on the view. But now you have to probably control drag to your safe area. So control drag to your safe area, and let me know if you see equal width or equal heights. Okay, so control drag to your safe area, or if you do see your view, control drag to your view. I mean, if you do see the option of equal heights on your view, do that. If not, go to the safe area. Everybody? Again, that's an 11.2 change there, so that's a nice change. So click on equal heights. Everybody has an equal heights, right? Either on the view or the safe area? Yes? So click on equal heights. And at that point, your error should go. Right now, there should be no more errors. That's fine. Again, that's an 11.2 change. Mine stays the same. Again, that's a nice change that Xcode added. I tend to go through the release notes of Xcode before I make an install. In that case, I did not see that particular change, but that's a very nice change because it kept my view where I estimated it to be, right? As opposed to making it the full height. And now I could go edit my equal heights, cool? Which we all will do. So now let's go ahead and edit. Yes? What did we do? We said our teal view will be laid out based on the relationship between the teal view and the view. A constraint from myself to you. Yeah. So, this question was, what exactly did we do when we control drag from our blue view over to our view? We're creating a constraint. Again, constraints are based on views. One view, view A, constrains to view B. View A doesn't constrain by itself. It needs some point of reference, right? Without a point of reference, you're in space. You don't know where you are, right? So you need to have a point of reference. Every view begins with a parent view. Our view begins with a parent view, which is the white view. And we put subviews in there. We need to lay out our subviews based on the parent view or a next subview. So you connect it by control dragging. Yes, exactly. In our case, we want the blue view, the parent view is the white view. So we control drag from blue to white. Cool? You need to be able to constrain to some view. You have to. Or else it's just in space, as I said, like it doesn't have any. As a matter of fact, it's going to probably default to 0, 0 at the top left edge. All right, cool. So now let's go edit. Where do we go to edit our constraint? Where do we go to edit a constraint? Margiette? Where do we go to edit a constraint? Right now, I want to edit my constraint for the height. Where do I go? Size inspector. Thank you, Margiette. Okay, so we go to the size inspector, and the size inspector is to the right of the attributes inspector, right where the ruler is there, correct? So click on the size inspector, and we want to edit our height. For mine, it says proportional height, and whoever else is on 11.2. If you have 11.1, Xcode 11.1, it might say equal height for you. Does it say that? So we want to click on edit. Click on edit. Do we see where it says multiplier? Or what does it say for you? Multiplier? All right. So multiplier for mine, I'm right at the ballpark here. Mine says 0.52 something. So I'll make it 0.5. Everybody make it 0.5 and press enter. This is for proportional height, yes. So Yulia, did you go to size inspector? Are you seeing an equal height? You should have four constraints right now. How many constraints do you have? Do we all have 4 constraints? Okay, so we're editing the height constraint. So on the height constraint, you want to put in 0.5. For the multiplier, again, the multiplier goes from 0 to 1, right? 1 obviously is the same size, 1 to 1 ratio. 0.5 is 50% of the height of my super view. Everybody? 0.2 is 20% and so forth. Yes, sir?
So is it better to always compare your view to super view, or?
It depends on what you're trying to lay out. If you're laying out a sibling, you might want to go with the sibling. For example, yesterday we had, remember the one view, actually it's right here. Let me go to it. Remember that view yesterday? So we had the green view laid out to the super view. And now we had the yellow view laid out to the green view, which is its sibling, right? So it wasn't laid out to the super view anymore, it was laid out to the green view.
So in this case, since it's on the screen, it's okay to lay it out to the super view.
Yes. And normally you want to lay out a view to its closest neighbor. In that case, the green view is the closest neighbor to the yellow. Yeah, you want to make sure that other view has constraints because you'll have a nightmare to deal with the errors. Right, so to the white screen, yes, exactly. So Luba brings up a good point. Avoid or do not control drag from view A to view B if view B hasn't been constrained yet, right? That's going to be a nightmare to get all your auto layout resolved. Yeah, like what we did there is correct, right? Like we went to the super view itself has its frame, right? So we did that. We need to lay it out to some view, the super view. Okay, great. So now let's go to edit. In the multiplier, we all edited to 0.5, correct? So I press enter. Again, 0.5 is 50% of the height of the screen, of that particular view there. So let's see. Great. Again, you could edit it after the fact. Like, for example, if somebody tell you make it 20% of the screen, what would you do? Make it 0.2, right? So I would go back to my edit. I would put 0.2, and I'll press enter. Right now, this is 20% of the height of the device. Everybody? Okay, so we'll go back to 0.5 here. Okay. Before we continue, let's see what it looks like on an iPhone 4. So I'll bring up my View as iPhone. Again, my View as iPhone is at the bottom of my canvas here. View as iPhone. I want to see what it looks like on an iPhone 4. So I'll click on iPhone 4. Right? Still looks good on the iPhone 4. Right? Everybody? Let's see what it looks like in landscape. Still looks good in landscape. Let's go back to portrait mode and let's go back to our iPhone Pro Max. Let's see what it looks like on iPad. iPad 12.9. The very last device on your left. Let's see what it looks like on iPad. iPad still looks good. Okay? Again, all devices, it scales correctly. It's half of the device, the height of the device. So let's go back to iPhone Pro and let's continue. Okay. You could drag in another view, or again, what's easier to do here? Should we go back to the object library? Option, right? So let's option drag a next view. And as we option drag the other view, make sure that you remove the constraints. So option drag, I'll click down on option, and I'll drag a view. Actually, it doesn't have any constraints, so no problem there. Do yours have constraints? No. Okay, good. So no constraints, no problem here. I will change the color, any color of your choosing. I'll change the color of the new view I just dragged in. I'll change the color of it. I will position it to the very bottom of my device. I'll leave some space in there just for us to make sure that we are using the constraints correctly and the constraints do work as intended. So currently our device or screen should look as on screen, right? Make sure you have no constraints. Make sure you go to the size inspector and it's empty, right? I go to the size inspector, I have no constraints on that particular view. So let's add constraints. We'll add constraints using the Add Constraints button. So click on the Add Constraints button. And we'll be setting zero. We'll be setting zero all around. Top, bottom, leading, trailing. So set zeros and make sure you click on the I-beam to commit. And make sure you click on Add for Constraints. So what are we doing? If you have some value at the top value here, like for mine it says 33, which makes sense. I'm currently 33 points away from the blue. That's what this says. So I put in 0 because I want it to snap right at the bottom of the top of the blue view. Everybody? I put in 0 because I want my yellow view to snap right at the bottom of the blue view. Okay? So I put in 0 here. I'll click on the I-beam. The the lead-in is also 0. Lead-in is also 0. Make sure you have 0 in here. Trailing is also 0. The bottom is also 0. So here I'm creating 4 constraints. Top, bottom, leading, trailing. And they're all set at 0. Yes, sir?
Why is the top 0? Wouldn't that go all the way to the top?
No, it's going to go to the closest neighbor in that case. It will go to the blue. Okay? If you see a bigger value like 300, that means it's going to the top. 300 points. Right? If I see 33, that makes sense because 33 is like right to the blue. But if you see 300, you probably don't have 300 right now. But if you were to say 300, then it will go to the top there. But for now, 0 is the closest neighbor. Blue is the closest neighbor. Okay? All right. So here, make sure you have your 4 constraints and click on Add 4 Constraints. Click on Add 4 Constraints. At this point, you should have a seamless snap all around, right? Top, bottom, left, and right. Everybody? Okay, great. So let's see what it looks like on an iPhone 4. Still looks good, iPhone 4. Let's see what it looks like on an iPad. Still looks good on an iPad. Okay?
I have a question. I think before when we did the green, even though we added, was it because we didn't have a height? But this one we do have a height.
Yeah, this one we set the height already, yeah. Is everybody up to date with what we have?
When we're doing this, once we set, I just gotta,
Did you use a button? That's probably a warning, not an error.
Oh, no, this is for the other thing. This is for when we did use like this.
Is it like an error or warning?
It's an error. It says fail to render an update.
But is it a red error in Xcode or is it an IB outlet error?
It's an IB design.
Close Xcode and reopen it. It might just be a rendering issue with the IB designable. Okay, cool. So we did the first exercise in the lab, right? Everybody? Were we able to get that yesterday? All right. Okay, so today we saw a new technique to use auto layout. We used pinning to pin to the edges. So that got us to where we wanted to be. So far, so good? Cool.
Why didn't we have to control drag the orange color?
You can, instead of doing the 0, you could have control drag from the bottom to the top and set vertical spacing. There's so many ways you could do auto layout. Yes, sir.
Is there, what do you call it? The pin. Is there a need to pin the bottom thing to the top?
The bottom thing to the top.
The top one.
This guy, it needs a height.
This is, oh, okay, if you just pin it to the, like for the top one, we only pin in 3 directions.
And then we give it a height.
And then we give it a height.
Yeah. All right, let us continue. So go ahead, drag in a next view controller, and this one is going to be 6, right? So drag in a 6 view controller, and we'll do the second question, this question here. We'll do that second question, question 2. So drag in a view controller. All right, cool. And I will go ahead and give this a name. So I will click on my view controller here, right below where it says view controller scene. I'll click once on it. I'll edit it to auto layout. 6. I'll copy that string. I'll press enter. I'll click on the view controller. I'll go to identity inspector. I'll go to storyboard ID. I'll paste it in. I'll press enter. And I have no more warnings in that case. Here I'll stop and I'll commit. I'll push because I've done one exercise. I will make a commit message and I'll push to GitHub. Right, everybody? So let's go to source control. Go to source control and go to commit. Source control, commit.
If we just try to push, would the computer know to say, yeah, we're pushing something over here?
Yes. So go to, the only thing we've changed was the storyboard. So do you see in your left pane, do you see a check in one of the boxes in your left pane? Right? It says main storyboard. Do we see that? You might not have a Git history. So we'll help you offline it down. Yeah, yours has one already from yesterday. Please raise your hand so that Genesis could pass with you later. Or probably after lesson, we'll help you. All right? Yes? Yes, just the one check I'm worried about right now is the main storyboard. That's the only place we work in. And that code here is XML. Everybody? So if you click on the main storyboard file, it should look very similar to mine. Currently, correct? So here, this is XML. Storyboard renders, it's behind the scenes, the code is XML. So here, let's just put in the commit message box down there where it says enter commit message here at the bottom. I'll simply put completed question 1. What's that? What's that? Okay, completed question 1. When I'm done with that particular message, I will go to the blue button to the bottom right where it says commit 1 file. Do we see that? I'll click on commit 1 file. I'll go back to source control. I'll click back on source control and I'll click on push. I'll click on push. It will push my changes up to GitHub. So it's pushing up to GitHub. Great. Perfect. So let's continue. Go back to the storyboard here. Let me get some more space here. Okay, cool. So we have our 6 view controller, and we want to do this layout here. So that layout, let's go over it, what it looks like. So there's one view, top to bottom, on the right side that takes up half the width of the device, and that view takes up the entire height of the device. To the right, we have 3 views. The width is equal to half the width of the device. It doesn't tell us a height here, right? So we'll go ahead and we'll actually use a stack view. We'll use a stack view for the left side, and for the right side, we'll just use a regular UI view. So for the left side, we'll use a stack view, and we'll put in some views in there. And for the right side, we'll just use a regular view. So let's go ahead. So, cool. Go to the object library. Search for UI stack view. Yesterday we saw stack views. We'll see it again today. So search for UI stack view. Here we see an H stack or horizontal stack, and we see a vertical stack. Which stack do we need for the left side? Vertical stack, right? So let's go ahead and drag in a vertical. So let's go ahead and drag in a vertical stack here. Right? So I have my vertical stack. I will drag the bottom edge to the bottom edge of my device. I'll drag the top edge to the top edge of my device. I will drag the trailing edge to approximately half the device's width. Okay? Now let's add some constraints for the stack view. We'll use pins. We'll pin it to the top at 0, pin to the top at 0, pin to the lead-in at 0, and pin to the bottom at 0. So set 3 constraints. Go ahead and set those 3 constraints on the stack view. Top 0, lead-in 0, bottom 0. So we're using the Add New Constraints button. So make sure your stack view is selected. Go to the Add New Constraints, and we're saying we pin it to the top, 0. We pin it to the lead-in, 0. We pin it to the bottom, 0. That's it. 3 constraints. Of course, we'll get an error because we don't have a width yet. Does that make sense? So here we're still red because we don't have a width. To confirm that, we could see what the error message says. If I click on my red dot here, it says need constraints for width. Let's go ahead and do that. We know how to control drag from one view to the next. We'll do it right here in the scene. So we'll control drag from the stack view over to the right where the white view is. So we'll control drag from the stack view over to the right side. Okay? So control drag from the stack view here over to view, to the right of the view. Okay? Great. What do we want to do here? We want to set equal width. So set equal width. That's the only one we want. So click on equal width. You don't have it either. Okay, so Xcode 11.2 is really nice. Cool. All right, so let's go to our document outline. You don't have any view. You have no equal width anything on that option.
No, you have to control that for the same area.
Okay, so let's go ahead and, as Mr. Suring is saying, if you don't have that option, first of all, let's give, well, stack view is called stack view, that's fine. Control drag from your stack view over to your safe area and select equal width, okay? Does equal width come up for you? We control drag from stack view to the view up top, or safe area, sorry. Control drag. Do we see equal width? Right? Everybody? Andy? All right. So click on equal width here. At this point, we have no error messages, but we have to go edit our width. Right? Everybody? Go edit your width and put 0.5 in there. So go to your size inspector, edit the width, and put in 0.5. So I'm going to go to my size inspector. I will go to width here. I'll edit width, and I'll say 0.5. right? I'm sorry? I'm not sure of the question. I have one width here. Say that again, Julia. Super view would be better because they're the same. Because the safe area doesn't have any, but any. Yesterday we went over safe area. Safe area is basically saying you cannot where the notch is at the top of the phone and the bottom where the home button is. But on the sides, there's nothing like special there. So they're the same size. If that makes sense. Okay, so we have our stack view. Everybody laid out their stack view correctly? Everybody laid out their stack view correctly? Okay, so let's go ahead and let's get a UI view. So I will get a UI view. So I will search for UI view. I'll quickly make this a color. Color. Again, choose any color you want here. Okay, I'll make 3 of those. Easiest way to make 3 of those is to option drag, correct? So I'll option drag from the first one. I have second view. I'll option drag. I have 3 views. Everybody? I haven't set any size. Everybody, I haven't set any size on those views I dragged in. I dragged in a UI view. Yes, go ahead. Yeah, we haven't done the right side yet. We haven't done the right side. We're only working on the left side right now. Yes. For the right side. Cool? All right. So everybody has 3 views. Does everybody have 3 views before I continue? How you been? What happened, man? Okay. Can I continue? Do we all have 3 views, colored views? Okay, cool. So go ahead and drag all 3 views. So I'm selecting all 3 views by by mouse clicking and selecting all 3 views. So I selected the 3 views, they're highlighted. So far, so good? Can we continue? Okay, I will go ahead and drag those 3 views into my stack view. Right? I drag them into my stack view. I have some more editing to do. I'll go to the attributes inspector of the stack view to continue editing the stack view. Right? Right now, the stack view has its views. You could tell the stack view how to lay out the views. So let's go to click on stack view. Where it says distribution, do we see distribution on the attributes inspector? Okay, click on distribution here and click on fill equally. And give it a spacing. Right now the spacing is 0. Give it a spacing of say 10 or 20. Do we see spacing? So click on spacing and give it 20 and press enter. Right? So we should now have the left side completed. How many I see you shaking your head? Any questions? The what? After break, I reinstalled my computer yesterday, like the operating system on it, so I need to reconfigure the zoom in portion of it. Cool? Yes, sir. Without the stack view, we'd have to do each view manually. Yeah, did you try this problem yesterday? Okay, so if you did try it, you'd see you have each individual view, you'd have to constrain by itself, and that's more time consuming than using a stack view. A stack view, you set those constraints on the stack view, you put in views in there, then you could go and modify. Yeah, exactly, exactly, exactly. All right, cool. I'm any good? You like stack views now? Wait till you see the code for it. Um, cool. All right, let us do the last portion of it. Actually, you guys do the last one. You have enough information now. So do the last. Basically, just drag in next UI view and give it a color. Make sure you drag it because that's going to go to start. So on the first time, you do that. Cool. Oh yeah, yeah. Drag it intentionally. Undo those two and drag it down. See like why do I drag it down to where I want it to be? So I will drag it down before you set the constraint. This one? It's not half actually. We'll double check what that's happening. It's practice, that thing, that auto layout. That's why Mini loves it so much. All right, so let's come back. Let's come back, and we are getting a UI view. I'm going to my library, I'm getting a UI view. I'm dragging it in here. I'm dragging it all the way down. Get in the practice of dragging the constraint where you want it, right? That way, because Xcode sometimes makes assumptions. Like it might want to stop it at the safe area. So intentionally drag the view where you want it to be. In my case, I want it to be all the way to the bottom, all the way to the top, to the trailing, right? So that's why I dragged it. Let me give it a color. Color, color, color. All right, cool. So here, let's set the constraints. We'll click on Add New Constraints button. I'll click on Add New Constraints button. I'll pin it to the top, which is 0. I'll pin it to the trailing at 0. I'll pin it to the bottom at 0. I'll add those 3 constraints. At this point, I'm missing a width, right? At this point, I'm missing a width. One other thing I could do, I could control drag from my red view to any of my green views. I could control drag from my red view to any of my green views and set the horizontal spacing. So that, let me do that. So I'll control drag from my red view over to my green view, click on horizontal spacing. I'll go edit my horizontal spacing. My horizontal spacing right now is 8. By default, Xcode gives you 8 as a padding between any view. By default, you get 8 points between any view, right? As a padding, Xcode gives that to you as a recommended padding between views there, minimum. So here I'm going to edit my padding from 8 to 0. That's what I want. That's my intention. That's what I want here. So at this point, I have no more warnings, no errors. Our example 2 is done. I will verify on a smaller device, right? Still works on iPhone 4. I'll verify on an iPad. Still works on an iPad, right? Great. Any questions? Yes. What does the error say? Yeah, but what's the constraint you're missing? Exposition, so you need the center or something. For which view? The red view we just put on screen? So it needs a width. All right, cool. Any other questions? Any other questions before we move on? Okay, let's move on to the last exercise of the day for auto layout. How are we feeling auto layout so far? We getting better? We experts? Amini love auto layout, right, Amini? I heard her. She said that. All right, let's drag in a seventh view controller. We had 7 tries at this. Okay. Let's get a view controller. And this one is a 7, so I'll go ahead and edit it. Auto layout 7. I'll click on my view controller button here, right at the black bar. I'll go to my identity inspector. I'll go to where it says storyboard ID, and I will paste in auto layout 7. I'll make sure to press enter. At this point, I have no more warnings up here. Great. So let's see what this exercise looks like. Okay. So here we have a view. It's equal width, right? It says equal width with the equal. Let me go back. Sorry. I don't want to go to that image. So the teal width is the same as the view's width. So we got that. The teal width is the same as the teal height. That we haven't seen. How do I proportion a width and a height? How do I set up a ratio, right? How do I set up a ratio of a view's width and its height? How do I do that? So that gives us practice with that particular exercise there. So the width and the height needs to be the same. Basically a square, but we're not hard coding it because we know what happens there if we hard code the number. If I say hard code 400 by 400, it will take the entire screen, first of all, on an iPhone 4. iPad is going to be a square, but that's not what we want. We want it to be the width long, and the height needs to be the same thing the width is. Everybody? So let's do that in auto layout. So we drag it in a view. Again, I'll try to position it right at the center where I expect it to be. I will drag the trail in. I'll drag the lead in to snap with the white view. And I'll give it a color. We love colors. Okay, so here I have a color. So far, so good. So for the width, I will snap the leading and the right edges to 0. Does that make sense? For the width, right? Because it has to be the width of the device. So for the width, the leading will be 0, the trailing will be 0. Using add new constraints, let's go ahead and do that. So click on the add new constraints button, pin it to the leading edge, pin it to the trailing edge. So far I have 2 constraints. I pinned it to the leading, which is 0. I pinned it to the trailing, which is 0. And I press in add 2 constraints. All right, so we have 2 constraints here. The view doesn't know about its Y. It doesn't know where it's in relationship to the super view, as far as like top and bottom. So we need to set some sort of vertical center. So let's go ahead and center our view based on the parent. So we'll click on the align button. I'll click on the align button, and I will center it vertically. So I'll click on vertical, only vertical. Click on the vertical container. I'll click on add constraint. At this point, how many constraints do we have? 3 constraints. So if we go to our error message here, it says you need a Y position or a height. So let's give it a height. I want to center it vertically, up and down, on the y-axis, up and down, on the y-axis.
So up and down is where
It's vertical.
it's like, okay,
Cool? All right, so now we want to do the height. What does the question say? The height should be the same as the width, correct? Correct? Let's go back to the question. The question says the height should be the same as the width. Do we see the second label? So let's go ahead and do that. I don't think we have done that before. Again, there's so many parts of Autolayout. But we'll control drag to the view itself. We'll control drag. Are you up here so far? I haven't done anything. Oh, you mean like where we are now? You should have 3 constraints so far.
Red line right there is not constrained horizontal.
Yes, exactly. So right now we're going to control drag to ourselves. Everybody, right? We know what we're doing? So I'm going to control drag vertically in the up direction, control drag upwards. Everybody, control drag upwards to myself and let go. We should have 2 options, height and aspect ratio. Do we see that? Okay. So I click on aspect ratio because I want to change the aspect ratio. I want the aspect ratio to be 1:1, 1:1 rather. Meaning 1:1, meaning the width and the height are the same.
Is it wrong if I have the width left? Is there something wrong?
You probably control drag diagonally.
Felt like I went left.
If you control drag diagonally, you might get a width option as well. But if you control drag directly north direction, you'll get a height and an aspect ratio. Do we have height and aspect ratio? So click on aspect ratio. At this point, our error message should have been gone now, correct? No more error message. But we need to edit the aspect ratio. Where do we go to edit? We go to the size inspector to edit, correct? So let's go to the size inspector for this particular view. Do we see an aspect ratio constraint? How many constraints do we have? Do we see an aspect ratio constraint? Okay. Click on the edit button. Click on the edit button. Do we see multiplier? Click on the down button of the multiplier. Do we see 1:1? Click on 1:1. Like magic. I said you guys love Autolayout. Right? So here we have a view where the width is the width of the device and the height is equal to the width. So far so good? Now we could lay a view in there. You guys could do that. That view that we lay out, we have to lay out a new view. That view is equal to half the height, half the width of this blue view. If we go back to the question, we have a purple view here. Again, you can make it whatever color you want. We have a purple view here. Purple view, the width is equal to half the teal height. The height is equal to half the teal height. Everybody understand that question? Everybody understand that question? And it's centered, obviously, of that teal view. Okay? So go ahead and do that particular exercise. And we'll stop here for auto layout. Yes?
For foreign commerce, some of them have like number variables. Does that mean like
Number variables. Let's see. Like what question? This one?
it'll just set the width and height to 90, but that means when the phone increases or decreases?
Like this one. This one is like a constant size.
Okay.
Yeah, good question. So very similar to what question we did here. I think this one was a constant, right? This one.
So it should look like different. Or
It's going to be the same.
even if it'll be like smaller. On
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right, cool. So we know what we're doing for question 3. Go ahead and drag in a view here. Give it some color and set the constraints for it. I'll let you guys do that. I'll just set my color up. Yeah. Okay, and this she's gonna do all three again later, so let's get this one done. Cool. So we have a view in here. I have a yellow view. Couple things I could do. I could use control drag. Everybody, I have a view in here. I could use control drag to the teal view. I have options. I could say I want to center it. I want to center it vertically. Remember, shift click. I could say I want it to be centered vertically. I want it to be centered horizontally. That makes it center of that blue view, correct? It makes it center horizontally. It makes it center vertically. Other things I could do, I could say, make it equal width and equal height. Right here, I have 4 constraints, correct? I have 4 constraints. What's that? After control drag to, so I control drag from my inner view to my blue view. Right? So here I have 4 constraints. And I could go ahead and edit. Now I could go ahead and edit the constraints for that particular yellow view here. I could say proportional height should be 0.5. Right? And I could say proportional width equal to 0.5. Right? At this point, I have a square inside of a square. Any questions? Again, what we did, we control drag from the yellow view. I control drag from the yellow view to the blue view. And I set 4 constraints on it. Right? I set equal width, equal height. I set center vertical, center horizontal. And I went to my size inspector and I edited my multiplier to 0.5 for the width and 0.5 for the height. So far, so good? Let's do it again. Control Z, where are you? Here. No constraints. If you want to do it together, take out your constraints and let's do it together. Only on the inner view. Everybody? Everybody? All right, so let's do it together. We control drag from the inner view here. I diagonally control drag, right? Diagonally control drag from the inner view. Tiffany, what's the question? To get the rest of the constraints. If I do directly north, I might not get all the constraints I want. Here I do get it, but there's times where you don't get all the constraints you want. So control drag from the inner view to your blue view, okay? Now I want, you see I didn't get my center, you see I missed one? You see, yeah, exactly. So here, make sure that you somehow control drag diagonally to capture all the constraints. Are we all seeing all the constraints we need? The constraints we need, center vertical, center horizontal, equal width, equal height. We use shift click. Shift click on those 4 options. So shift click on center vertical, center horizontal, equal width, equal height. We're not done. We need to go edit in the size inspector. We edit in 2 constraints. What constraints we edit in? The width and the height. And what are the multipliers? Luba, what's the multiplier for the width? 0.5, and for the height? 0.5. So go to the size inspector and edit. Everybody up to date here? But just go edit it, that's fine. Go edit it, it's going to go back to the size you want. Even if it does take the entire screen, which is, again, that's pre-Xcode 11.2, it might take up the entire screen. Go back and edit it, and it's going to work. Did it work? Edit the width and the height. So here we go to our edit. We edit the width. We make it 0.5 for the multiplier. For the editing part, Yulia? Yulia? You have 4 constraints, right? Not anymore. Let's do it one more time again. Right, Yulia? Control drag diagonally. Let go. Do you see the dialogue that I have up there? Is yours similar? Shift, hold down Shift, hold down the Shift button, and then select center vertically, center horizontally, equal width, equal height. Okay? And then mouse click outside. And now you want to go to the size inspector and edit the width, make it 0.5, and make the height 0.5. Cool. So here we have 0.5, and for here we have 0.5. Perfect. Cool. Now let's test it on the iPhone 4. Still good, right? iPhone 4, it's still a square. On iPad, 1 second. On iPad, we have this looking here. On iPhone, we have this. Landscape, we have this. Right? Again, in that particular instance there, it's fine. Right? Because what we're looking for was the portrait mode of it. We'll talk more about size classes and how to change size classes or how to do more with Autolayout. There's a lot more that you need to do. Great, so let's go back to portrait, and it looks good on all devices in portrait mode. All right, any questions before we stop today? At this point, we could attack any Autolayout question we have. We could layer view based on X, Y. We could layer view based on the next view. We could pin to edges, right? We have a lot of power right now, right? Nobody's smiling from ear to ear. Okay, so I think I wanted to show us one more thing. No, that's fine. No more things here. Cool. All right, so we'll stop here.